Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name's Amber and today's video I'm going to be talking about all the books that I want to read in 2026. So since this is my first video of 2026, Happy New Year, and I hope that your 2026 reading is going really well so far. So I did plan on doing quite a lot of other videos in relation to my 2025 reading, but I left it a little bit too late and I'm not sure that anyone would be interested in watching that at the minute. So what I'm going to do is quickly run through how my 25 books in 2025 went and talk about the reasons why I'm doing 26 books in 2026, because I did question it a little bit. So out of the books that I had on my 2025 list, I will put some graphics up on the screen just showing you the covers and things of the books that were on there. So by the end of the year, I only actually read 12 of them, so not even half. However, 5 of them were either DNFs or books that I've removed from my TBR, which leaves 8 of them unread. So in my mind, I have still kind of dealt with over half of them, whether that be reading it or trying to read it or deciding that I no longer want to read it. I'm kind of happy with that, and I think when I've done this in previous years, I have carried over some of those books onto the next year's list. I don't think I've done that this year because, I don't know, I wanted to keep this list feeling very fresh and new and exciting. I've carried one over actually. But based on those results, I did wonder whether 26 books would be a bit overwhelming, just in the sense that I probably will read about 50 this year. I've read 50 for the last few years, and that would mean that at least half of my TBR would be kind of preset for me. And I did debate whether I wanted to set like 10 books or something like that, but when it came to picking the books that I wanted to read this year, I was very excited to read anything and everything, basically. On my total TBR, there's around 200 books at the minute. So to whittle down 200 books into just 10 was almost even more overwhelming. So I have picked 26, and to be honest, it's all just a bit of fun. I'm not really bothered if I complete this challenge or not. I've never actually successfully read all the books on my TBR list ever. This year I've deliberately picked stuff that I'm excited to read, stuff that I'm already quite highly anticipating, and there's only a few books where I've added them out of kind of necessity, where it's like the next in a series and I have to read it in order to keep up, or it's been on my TBR for the longest time. So there's only a few like that. That's my thought process behind it, and I am genuinely excited to read all of these. So without further ado, let's get into the list. So I first made the list and I've separated them into 3 sections because they've kind of fallen into that naturally. So we'll start with the ones that are on my physical TBR. So first up, we've got Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. This is the book that's been on my TBR for the longest at this point, so that's why this is on this list. And it's only short, but I've heard that it's kind of sad, and I think that's why I've been putting it off. I would say that this is a classic book. A lot of you have probably already heard about it or read it, but basically this one is about an intense love affair between 2 men in Paris in the 1950s. I have no idea how it's going to end, but I imagine it's not going to end well. I think this is the only book on my TBR at the minute. Let me just check. Yeah, so this is the only book on my TBR at the moment that I added back in 2021. So I added this on my TBR April 5th, 2021, and then the next one isn't till 2022. So this is definitely the oldest by a long shot. That's coming up to 5 years. I've wanted to read this and I haven't. So yeah, this is definitely up there in terms of priority this year. I'm going to be pulling a lot of these off the shelves as I talk about them. We're still in the process of putting books on these shelves, and we've not yet decided who's are going where, how they're being organised. So I've basically just dumped a lot of my books here today so that the shelves don't look completely empty. So they will change quite a lot, I imagine, in my next videos. So the next one is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. This is another short one, so this one shouldn't be too intimidating. I've only read one other book by this author, and that was Earthlings, which I gave 5 stars. And I am expecting this one to be not as good for me personally, which is why I've kind of been putting it off. I almost wish that I'd read this first and then Earthlings, but I think this is about a woman who works in a convenience store, and a lot of other people in her life think that she's just treading water. Nothing's really going on in her life, but she seems to be quite content with it. I don't really know what the plot is going to be. I'm hoping that it's going to be as weird as Earthlings, but I don't think anything can be as weird as Earthlings. But yeah, I definitely need to read this. I've had this sat on my shelf for quite a while now. Next up is a book that I've had for quite a few years. It's been on my TBR for a while, and my friend bought it me for my birthday many years ago now. So this is The Girls Are Also Nice Here by Laurie Elizabeth Flynn. So it's about a girl called Ambrosia who arrives at a prestigious college. She's desperate to fit in, but she's struggling to navigate the rules of this strange elite world until she meets Sully, and the two quickly become inseparable. Determined, oh, I like that. She calls herself Amb. That's cute. I mean, if my name's ever shortened, it's usually Ambs. Determined to impress Sully, Amb finds herself drawn into her new best friend's dangerous, manipulative games. Blah, 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 blah. Nice girls can do really bad things. So this sounds like it's going to be a dark academia, toxic, obsessive friendship kind of story. And I've kind of been slacking in reading mystery thrillers lately, so I thought I would add a couple onto the list just to keep it exciting. And then next up, we've got Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. The reason this is on this list is because, again, it was on my TBR, and in this case, my sister-in-law bought it for me a few years ago, and I've still not read it. So it's the ones that I've been bought as gifts that I feel the most guilt about not reading. This book is about a woman called Martha, who is told that she's clever and beautiful, a brilliant writer who has been loved every day of her adult life by one man, her husband, Patrick. So why is everything broken? I believe this one is about mental health. I've seen a review recently that described this main character as very kind of insufferable. So I'm interested to see what I think of it. But I thought this would be an interesting, more literary fiction, contemporary fiction, just about a woman having it all but being quite sad about it. So yeah, I think it does still sound very interesting. The next one is one that I have kind of added out of necessity, and this one scares me because it's so big. This is A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J Maas. I read the first two books in the ACOTAR series over the last couple of years. I think I started it in 2024 and then I read one last year, and I surprisingly really enjoyed them. They were quite a guilty pleasure for me, and I have to say I did really enjoy the second book. But I did read it last maybe January, February time, so it's definitely time for me to pick another one up. But yeah, this one is very, very long. Let's have a look. It looks like it's about 700 pages with the acknowledgements. I think this might be the longest in the series though, and I have heard good things about it. So this is one that I need to read just so that I don't spend like forever reading this series. And then another one that my friend bought me, and I still have, no, she didn't buy it me actually. I bought this because my friend recommended it, because I was telling her that I struggle with romance books. I find them very cringe, and she said that this one isn't cringe. This is Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren, and I saw this one in the works and I just thought the colours were really nice, so I bought this a few years ago and I still haven't read it. This one is about a girl called Macy who is settling into an ambitious, if emotionally tepid routine. I think she works as a doctor, she's planning her wedding to an older, secure man, but then she runs into Elliot, who is her first and only love. At 13, he was her first real friend, and by 18, he was her everything. But just as they were about to take on the world together, everything fell apart. So this one sounds like it's going to be a second chance romance situation, and I'm going on a few holidays this year. I like reading romances on holiday, so this one will probably come with me, providing that it is a happy romance. It looks like it will be, and I think that is probably the only romance on this list this year. The next book is one that I've added quite recently, and it's Ring Shout. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce the author's name. This is one that I've borrowed, and I really need to give it back to that person that I borrowed from, so this is why I've added it to the list. This is quite a short historical horror, where I think it's about the KKK, but the KKK are actually demons, like they're a supernatural entity, I think. And it's about this girl called Maurice and her fellow resistance fighters who are basically trying to stop the Klan. So this one sounds like a lot of fun. I did have it on my Winterween TBR. I've recently tried to do Gabby's readathon. That happened a couple weeks ago, but I didn't get round to reading this. So the next chance that I'm in the mood for a horror, this is the one that will be read. So the next one is a library book. So this is another one that I have to get to pretty quick. This is Endling by Maria Reaver. This was a Booker Prize 2025 long list. I don't know if it made it to the short list, but I heard some really good things about it from Lids here on YouTube. I've forgotten her username, but I'll link it down below. And she did some videos where she read a lot of the books that were longlisted for the Booker Prize. But we're following this woman called Yiva, who's a scientist who scours the country's forests and valleys, trying and failing to breed rare snails, while her relatives urge her to settle down and start a family of her own. But what they don't know is that Yiva already dates plenty of men, not for love but to fund her work, entertaining Westerners who come to Ukraine on guided romance tours, believing they'll find docile brides untainted by feminism. And then I think we're also following a couple of other women who are involved in this booming marriage industry. And I've heard that this book is very interestingly put together. Like, I'm sure she described it as kind of meta, and it's just very surprising. So this one sounds really fun. Not something that I would typically read, but the way that she talked about this book just made it sound really, really interesting. And then the last one that's on here as my physical TBR that doesn't fall into the next category is The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. So this is the final book in the Poppy War trilogy. The reason this is on here is because I still want to remember the first two books by the time that I finish the series. So it definitely has to be read this year. I've really enjoyed the Poppy War series so far. The first book was like a 4.5 and the second book was a 5-star for me. Well, not last year, the year before. But again, this is a big book. It's 600 pages. I know I will enjoy it when I get round to it. I just kind of need to be in the mood for it. I'm not the biggest fantasy reader, so having these big chunky fantasy books just sat around for a long time is normal for me. So hopefully the guilt of having this on my TBR list for the year 2 years in a row will force me to read it this year. Encourage me, that's a better word. We don't want force. So the next category I have is non-fiction. I've really been into non-fiction recently. When I put this list together, I didn't realise there was, how many? 8 on here. So 8 out of the 26 are non-fiction, which is not quite a third, is it? Just under a third? But I do tend to have at least one non-fiction on the go at any point, so hopefully I should get through these no problem. So the first book on this list is Girls Play Dead, Acts of Self-Preservation by Jen Percy. Apologies if I'm looking down, I'm just reading them off my laptop. This came to my attention quite recently. I think I saw a TikTok on it. So it's a memoir, but also a sociological, psychological kind of book about women who have to play dead or freeze in the moment. So I think it's critiquing the idea that someone is either going to fight or flight in a traumatic situation. And I know that recently we have started to recognise the idea of fight, flight or freeze. To be honest, I'm not seeing a lot of focus on that at the minute. So what I'm hoping this book will do is talk about why women have to freeze in order to protect themselves for their own safety, especially when it comes to sexual assault and domestic violence, where a lot of the blame is put on the victims to stop what is happening or get out of that situation. And I'm hoping that this book explores why this is easier said than done. So I'm very excited to pick this one up. The next one is The New Age of Sexism by Laura Bates. So if you watched my best books of 2025, you'll have seen that Men Who Hate Women was probably my best book of last year, just for the way it made me feel and the way it made me think about the world that we're living in. And this is Laura Bates' most recent book, where she talks about a lot of the same topics, but she's focusing on the topic of AI and how that is going to impact on the patriarchy with AI generated images, AI girlfriends and things like that. So yeah, again, very excited to read this one. Next up is another book by an author that I've read and loved before, A Story of a Murder, The Wives, the Mistress and Dr. Crippen by Hallie Rubenhold. So I read the 5 a couple of years ago after it was recommended by, is it Meg with Books? She's probably my favourite book channel on here, even though our reading tastes aren't necessarily exactly the same. But I do love her non-fiction recommendations. And she recently read this newest book by Hallie Rubenhold, and it made it to her best books of the year list. True crime is a guilty pleasure of mine, so I'm excited to read it from more of an ethical, victim-focused lens. So the next book is one that I do own physically. It's actually one of the only books that I've bought in the last few years where I've never heard of it before upon buying it, and it's called The Walnut Tree, Women, Violence and the Law, A Hidden History by Kate Morgan. The Walnut Tree examines how 19th and early 20th century legal history has influenced our modern day stances on issues such as domestic abuse, sexual violence and divorce, and lifts the lid on the shocking treatment of women under British law and what it means for them today. And it also mentioned a case, the Clitheroe wife abduction. And Clitheroe is somewhere, well, I live in Lancashire and Clitheroe is in Lancashire, and I've never heard of this case. And I just thought this sounded very, very interesting. I love a bit of history. I love women's history in particular. So again, very, very excited for this. I wonder how many times I've said excited in this video. Probably a hell of a lot. The next book on this list is called The Palestinian-Israeli Conflict by Martin Bunton, and this is a short introduction to the history. The reason that I want to read this is because I feel quite uneducated around this topic. Obviously there's so much going on in the news and on social media. I just feel like I don't really know what's happening, and that is a very privileged place to be in, but I definitely want to learn more. So I did a bit of research on it, and I've heard that this is quite a nice place to start as someone who doesn't know a lot about this conflict. And then the next book is One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This by Omar El Akkad, I think. So I've just googled it. Omar is an Egyptian Canadian American author, and I saw that Books and Lala read this last year and she really enjoyed it. She rated it really highly, and I just thought that the title of this book was so evocative. Is that the word? Like, I love the title. One day everyone will have always been against this. I believe he tweeted something similar to this in relation to what's happening in Gaza, and I'm just really interested to read more about this man's views. I believe it's kind of a mix of an educational but a memoir kind of story as well. But yeah, I just want to be a bit more informed, and that's what I'm hoping that this book will do for me. So the next book is another one I think actually that I hadn't heard of before. I saw it in Waterstones. I was really drawn in by the cover, the title, what it was about. It's called When the Dust Settles, Searching for Hope After Disaster by Lucy Easthope, who is Britain's top emergency planner. So the back of the book says that Lucy is a world-leading authority on recovering from disaster. She holds governments to account, supports survivors and helps communities to rebuild. She's been at the centre of the most seismic events of the last few decades, advising on everything from the 2004 tsunami, the 7/7 bombings, the Grenfell fire, and the war in Ukraine. Her job is to pick up the pieces and get us ready for what comes next. I just thought this sounded very fascinating. I do love kind of learning about these big disasters, but I've never really thought about the people that are directly involved in it to try and help us recover from it. I just thought that sounded like such an amazing, inspirational job, and I love reading a book about someone who does a cool job. Very excited for this as well. Sorry, I keep saying that I'm very excited, but I'm so excited. And then the last non-fiction, for me, sounds like a bit more of a self-help, but I kind of want it to be a self-help. It's called The Courage to be Disliked by Fumitake Koga and Ichiro Kishimi. I've seen this one is quite popular, and I was talking about it with my mum. Basically, I had a meltdown after I was at work one day, went to my mum, really upset. Basically came away with the idea that I need to have the courage for people not to like what I'm doing. I had a bit of an epiphany that at work I want to be more assertive and I want to stop trying to people please so much. And we were talking about this book, The Courage to be Disliked, and I thought that sounded very interesting. Obviously, I don't want to be hated or treat people unfairly, but I'm hoping that this book will help me see that I don't need to let people walk all over me and I can approach it in a different way. So that's what I'm hoping this book will do for me. And then the last category that we have here is just other highly anticipated books. So just stuff that I don't have physically, isn't non-fiction, but I'm very excited to read. I went through all of my TBR basically, all 200 books. I went through, checked that I still wanted to read them. These are the ones that stood out as like, yes, I'm very excited for this. So we firstly got The Killer Question by Janice Hallett. I really enjoy her books. They're really fast-paced, mixed media mysteries, very cleverly written, and I just get completely sucked in. Like, I don't want to put them down. And this is her latest one, which is set in a British pub, and it's about a pub quiz. And I'm just hoping that it's really cozy and really like comforting. So I definitely want to read this one as soon as. The next one is actually one that I've already finished, which is good. This is The Compound by Aisling Roll, I think. I won't go into my thoughts now, I'll save that for my next wrap-up video. This book describes itself as Love Island meets Lord of the Flies. So we're watching this reality game show, basically set up a lot like Love Island, where we've got girls who come in, boys who come in, and every night they have to be in a couple and share a bed or they'll be banished from the compound. It's also a bit like Big Brother in the sense that they have to complete tasks to get rewards, but this is a way like more hyped up version. The stakes are a lot higher and it's clearly set in some kind of dystopian world. Very interesting book. And at least it means that I have read already one of the 26. Next up we have On Earth as It Is Beneath by Anna Paula May. I really should Google how to say her name. Is it May? Is it Mai? Because I keep talking about it and I don't know how to say her name. This is the author who wrote Of Cattle and Men, which is a book that I read last year and made it to my top 10. And this one, let me just check the actual synopsis of this. I know this one is set in a dystopian world. So this says, on land where enslaved people were once tortured and murdered, the state built a penal colony in the wilderness where inmates could be rehabilitated but never escape. Now, decades later, and having only succeeded in trapping men, not changing them for the better, its operations are winding down. But in the prison's waning days, the warden has unleashed a new horror. Every full moon night, the inmates are released, the guards are armed with rifles, and the hunt begins. Oh my god, that sounds really fun. I'm hoping it has commentary on the prison system and how we deal with rehabilitation. But it also sounds like quite a fun dystopian horror setup. Next one is a book, I think by the same publisher, Charcoal Press. So this one is The Rooftop by Fernanda Trias. So this one sounds like it's more of a literary, thought-provoking book about a woman called Clara who lives in this house with her father and her daughter, and she's very, very scared or paranoid about the outside world. And the rooftop becomes their only place of freedom. It doesn't seem like there's much plot going on in this summary, but I have had quite good luck with this publisher in the past. They translate books from Spanish to English, so yeah, I'm excited to give it a try. Next, we have The Body in Question by Jill Ciment. This one is about a criminal trial, but we've got two of the jurors who start an affair, I think. Let me just refresh my memory. Okay, yeah, so the trial is about a toddler who has been murdered by one of his twin sisters. Oh, I was really confused then. I was like, one of his twin sisters, but if he's a twin, he can only have one sister, right? But I'm guessing they're an older set of twins. So they're all staying in this motel and two of the jurors start having an affair, but it's only during deliberations that the lovers learn that they are on opposing sides of the case. This one just sounds really interesting and quite like scandalous, sensationalist. And this is one that's been on my TBR for a little while, and it's only through like reading the synopsis again I was like, oh yes, this sounds very up my street. Next up we have Rejection by Tony Talathamut. So I've heard about this one through Cameron from Slaggy Book Club. I think this one is quite a recent release, but she says that this one is very, very dark, quite disturbing. So this is a book told in 7 interconnected stories, and we're following characters as rejection throws their lives and relationships into chaos. It just intrigued me, it sounded interesting, and she did rate this very highly. And I think this is the only book on here that is told, the only kind of short story collection book, and I do tend to love those, so hopefully this one works for me. Next up we've got another library book. This is The Book of Guilt by Catherine Chidgey. This one was a recommendation from my dad, so he read this one recently. I'm always getting recommendations from my dad and then adding them to my list and then not picking them up for a long time, so I thought I would jump on this one. So this is set in 1979 in England. Vincent, Lawrence and William are the last remaining residents of a secluded New Forest home, part of the government's Sycamore scheme. Every day the triplets do their chores, play their games and take their medicine under the watchful eye of 3 mothers, Mother Morning, Mother Afternoon and Mother Night. All the boys want is to get well and be sent to the big house in Margate to a life of sun, sea and fairground rides. But as the government looks to shut down the Sycamore homes, the triplets begin to question everything that they've been told. I believe this is like a dystopian, mysterious kind of book, and I do trust my dad's judgment, so I'm going to give this one a go pretty soon. And I added it to this list so that I don't not forget about it, but so that it doesn't just sit languishing on my TBR forever like a lot of the other books he's told me to read. The next one is a fantasy that I've added because of Books and Lala, and also I suppose the rest of the hype that I've seen around this book. It's The Will of the Many by James Islington. This one, I've heard it compared to kind of like Hunger Games. It's a academia kind of book, but it's got a competition, I think, and I've heard that it's got a really good ending. I suppose my thought process is that if I read The Burning God by R.F. Kuang first, then I can read this one as a bit of a reward to start a new series. And this is quite a new one, so I think the second one may have come out or maybe coming out soon, but it just means that I can read them kind of as they're coming out potentially. So yeah, I thought that could be my newest fantasy read. And then lastly is one that I keep looking for in shops but I haven't found it yet. It's On the Beach by Neville Shute. So this book is set in southern Australia after a nuclear World War III has destroyed most of the globe. The few remaining survivors in Australia await the radioactive cloud that is heading their way and bringing certain death to everyone in its path. Among them is an American submarine captain struggling to resist the knowledge that his wife and children in the United States must be dead. Then a faint Morse code signal is picked up, transmitting from somewhere near Seattle, and Captain Towers must lead his submarine crew on a bleak tour of the ruined world in a desperate search for signs of life. I love a nuclear war story. I love this idea that, you know, there's no hope whatsoever and then there's a little bit of hope. I think it's a classic. It was published back in 1957. I just have a really good feeling about this. I have no idea why, but it feels like it could be a 5-star maybe. So that's all the books that I've added onto my 26 books in 2026. To help me get through them this year, I have actually done a TBR jar. So in this jar is every single book that is on my physical TBR and on my Kindle. So everyone that I could just pick up and read as and when. So what I've done is I've picked a different pattern paper for each like category. Say like this one here, I can't actually remember what each pattern is for. I've written them down. But yeah, so there's like this green plant one, and then this like blue flower one, and then I've got like a strawberry kind of one. So I've written down all the ones that are on my Kindle. If I have the book physically, I've also added another slip of paper with that book on, so essentially giving it like a double hit. If it's on my 26 books in 2026, I've added it a third time. So it's kind of like the Hunger Games where, what is it? If you buy the Tesserae, you get your name put in multiple times, so there's more chances of you picking that book. So that's how I've kind of decided to do it. So if I'm specifically looking for a book that's on my 2026 TBR, I can look for the pattern, can't remember what it is at this point in time, that corresponds to that TBR. Or if I'm just picking them out at random, then there's more chance of me picking that out. I haven't actually used this yet. I'm planning on doing a vlog possibly in February where I do read some books from my TBR jar. So let me know if you'd like to see that. I am hoping to read as many of these books as possible this year, and I'm hoping that this will help me do that. Please do let me know if you've read any of the books that I've mentioned, or if you think any of them sound really interesting, if there's any that you want to see me read and talk about, and I will try and get to them as soon as I can. Please hold me accountable because I really do want to get as many of these read this year. I feel very invigorated right now talking about all these books that I'm excited about. I just want to read all day, so that's probably what I'm going to go and do. But thank you for watching this video. Please give it a like if you enjoyed it so that I know. Please do subscribe if you want to see more from me in the future, and I'll hopefully see you in my next video. Bye!